it's better to ask for forgiveness afterwards.
Exactly. Well, we're live now anyway. Yeah, I mean, what a way to start. Bob, I have a feeling this one was a long time in the works. Fair play. Yes, I make it like 2.5 years.
you have tried very hard to make this happen.
Yeah.
I have been elusive.
Yeah, we kind of chatted a bit, like DM'd a bit, and then it was like, oh, I'm like, you're a busy guy. And then we chatted in Lowlands.
And games as well.
Yeah, BK introduced us in Lowlands, and we said, "Oh, we know each other." And then BK was like, "He should do a podcast with you." I said, "You know, he fucking should." BK, you're right. But yeah, no, it's great. I'm delighted to get to chat to you. How are you? You were like hiking or something, is it?
Yeah, I was in Finland. I tried to do this Yeti hike with old college mates every year. We skipped 1 year in the last 7. But this one was great. My friend's shoes fell apart on the first day of the hike. First left one on day 1 and then the right one on day 2. It was amazingly, duct tape can do anything, and we survived. But it was pretty amazing.
How long is the hike, and what type of like weather and terrain and stuff?
Just before we went, it had snowed for 2 days. It was like early snow. There was up to half a meter of snow. Which luckily melted by the time we got there, which meant that all the rivers that we had to cross were flooding. So that was really interesting. The terrain is like, it's between, sometimes you're on this forest path, a little bit of like fjords or like these hills, 500-600 meters. And then sometimes you're just hiking through forest. And it was mainly raining, the classic Finnish - Icelandic weather, mainly raining, 1 day of sun. But yeah, we were going to do 100 kilometers or so, which is like a classic that we would do. And we did maybe like 50 because we were fixing the shoes like once an hour. We at some point looking and being like, oh, we're moving at like 2 kilometers per hour pace, which was not epic, but something different.
Do you camp up there as well then?
Yeah. So in Finland, it's pretty common in the wilderness that there's cottages in the national parks that you can stay. But we did like tent nights for a few nights and then 1 night in a cottage just to dry our stuff after the rain.
So how many days was it? Like 4 days then?
Yeah, like 3.5, like four-ish days. We had to kind of cut it short because the shoes gave up.
Yeah. I'd say there was no comments passed to that guy. It was just like, it's just one of those things, man. Don't worry about it. I'd say it was just constant bombardment of abuse for the entire like 50 kilometers.
Yeah. There was some abuse, and then there was a little bit of feeling bad for him. But he was a trooper, getting through 4 days. I mean, it was 5 kilometers into this hike that his shoe fell apart. So
are they like new shoes? Were they like, oh guys, I got these new shoes just for this hike? Or are they?
No,
should he have like when looking at the shoes initially pre-break? Were you like, why is he wearing those? Why did he not get new shoes?
I would say that the first bad sign was the application of super glue. Before we left, my sister lives up in Lapland, so that's kind of like a little base camp. And before we left from there, he was super gluing one of the shoes. So I think that was a sign that he did not follow.
Yeah. It's kind of like, when you get a lift or you get a ride in someone's car and you see them doing something weird and you're like, wait, why are they doing that? Is this safe? Is this car okay? I assume that's Chase because Bill's too old to type. Jami, go do great breakdancing. Can you do breakdancing?
There is a secret past of me as a breakdancer. Yes. I mean, I used to have
doing it.
Yeah. I had hair, and then I liked head spins, and now it's like this, wearing the hair. Yeah, I used to break dance. Yeah, from I was like 16 to 19, I breakdanced. I like to say that I went to Braunschweig in Germany for Battle of the Year, which if you do breakdancing, that what used to be the main event back in the day. But I went to spectate, so it sounds better if I just leave it at saying I went there.
Yeah, that's like me saying I went to the games in 2019 and then like not answering any follow-up questions.
Exactly.
Like, no,
exactly.
I just went. You don't need to know why. I just went.
Yeah, pretty much.
Chase follows up with I lost Manny dance-offs to Jami. I feel like you can put anyone's name at the end of that sentence when it's Chase. It's like I lost Manny dance-off too insert any name like in after that. How did you get into that then? Was that like, were you kind of an alternative kid in school then? Were you like seeking out alternative means of entertaining yourself?
Oh, when I got to breakdancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my background was in judo. I did judo from age of 6 and competed at a decent level in Finland. So basically, it's like when you compete in Finnish national team, most of the time you just go abroad for one match. They beat you up, and then you go back home. So I did that for a while in judo, and then I was kind of in my teenage years and had to impress the ladies somehow. So I thought instead of losing judo matches abroad, it's much more impressive to do some breakdancing. And got into it with this actually German guy who had lived in Finland for a long time, who did judo as well. He was a coach, and then he was a dance teacher as well. So he was very old school moves already then, and I learned from him. And we did some battles together and things like that. We had a little crew.
And what's the I don't know, like the prevailing or the most important quality for you to have? Is it like strength? Is it like, do you need to have like an internal metronome giving you a bit of a beat, or are you able to is it just like being able to hold yourself upside down, being able to, like body manipulation type stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it would be lovely to have an internal metronome to hold me to the beat. I think that is my greatest failing. But I think people approach it differently. There's people who have more style, people who have very good rhythm, and then there's people who just bust out them crazy power moves. So I was trying to bust out the crazy power moves, but my power moves were like, windmill and a little bit of head spinning. And, it wasn't like that impressive. Couple little freezies and things, So I tried very hard, but I wasn't amazing at any point at it. But, when you try so hard to do something for 3-4 years and, you're invested in it, you get to be okay.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I've been doing CrossFit for more than 3 or 4 years, and I'm still pretty shit.
Hey, I've been doing CrossFit since 2006, and I'm still pretty shit. So hey, could be worse.
Was CrossFit your next thing after breakdancing then?
No. So I moved to France when I was 20, and I went to work actually at Euro Disney because I'd studied French. I wanted to learn how to speak French properly. So I figured I'll go there for 6 months. But I was always, into Bruce Lee and all this martial arts stuff. So I found a really good martial arts school with a Sifu, Didier Bedard, who had studied with William Chung, who trained with Bruce Lee. So it's like, it's amazing,
Yeah.
And I actually did Wing Chun there for 3 years. I stayed to do martial arts. I actually wanted to be a martial arts teacher. And I stayed for that. And then that got me to Chinese medicine and, all sorts of complicated things. But yeah, Wing Chun was my next thing after breakdancing.
How many languages can you speak?
So I can speak Finnish, still okay, English, and then I can speak French. I studied in French, my first degree, and then now I'm Renia Talaisen Skuliko. So I'm trying to learn to speak Icelandic, but it's pretty tricky language. I'll get it. It might take me a little bit, but
is there similarities? Is it like, the way, like if you're in, I don't know, I assume this is all assumption, so maybe I'm wrong, but if you're in like Finland and you go to Sweden, you can kind of pick up certain bits of similar like words and stuff, and if you go to like Norway, there's similar words that you could get by like with just Finnish. Is that fair?
Not with Finnish. So it kind of works between Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish, and then it kind of works between Danish and Norwegian and Icelandic a little bit. But like Icelandic language isolated itself, over 1,000 years ago, pretty much. So it's like old Norwegian, essentially.
So is there no transference of Finnish to the rest then?
No. The closest like linguistic relative is Hungarian, which we don't really share words, but we have similar strange grammar. But we do have some words that are the same in Icelandic and in Finnish. For example, muurarimestari, which is the master bricklayer. And then we also have suklaarusina, very important, chocolate raisin. It's the same word. So we have a few,
just your everyday phrases, like common phrases. Yeah, like not necessarily your greetings, but that guy's a master bricklayer. Or like, hey, look, that's not rabbit shit, that's a chocolate raisin. Those important phrases.
I love that chocolate raisin is the same word in 2 languages. I don't know how that happened, but I'm very happy that it did.
Yeah, I assume it was like some Icelandic guy was over in Finland, came back and was like, guys, they have fucking raisins and they're covered in chocolate, and they call the
I
place.
know.
Yeah, that's funny. So you were 20 when you went to France. Did you go on your own?
Yeah, it was just me. It was funnily enough, I went to do the job interview to get to Disney just before the trip to the Battle of the Year for the Breakdancing World Championships.
Wow,
So it's an
this
epic
is
journey.
such a
It's
perfect
intertwined.
timeline. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the job at Disneyland?
I was not a character. I did. If any kids are listening, no one's playing the characters; they're real. But I wasn't. I was. I worked first at this thing called guest flow, so I just made sure that people go where they need to be in the shows and parades and things like that. And then I did guest services, which was like VIP tours, guided tours in the park, taking in all the complaints and taking care of lost children. So it was a diverse set of things that I had to do.
So when you take care of lost children, I assume you just put a costume on them and put them into like Tiny World or something, and you just like you give them a job. You're basically like, you belong to us now. You just put a little hat on them, push them on, and other people are walking around being like, wow, the animatronics are so realistic, and it's like a child like just crying.
Essentially what you do is you hope that they don't cry, and if they don't cry, or if they do cry, you just put them in front of the TV and you put a Disney movie on that you would like to watch that day, and then they'll watch it, but you're actually watching the movie.
Oh,
no, we took very good care.
You don't need to tell me, man. 3-year-old. Like I have a 3-year-old, and I'm like, do you know what's a really good movie? I'm trying to get her
Die Hard. Die Hard. No.
Yeah. Has anyone in school ever told you about Lord of the Rings, the director's cut? It's like you'll really like the orcs. And then
built the attention span early on.
Oh yeah, really good. Like you want to get that story arc, you just want to have an appreciation for that early doors. So you worked in Disneyland, you left Disneyland, you wanted to continue your education. Are you still doing that? Are you still like educating yourself in that, like in that kind of classic way of like degrees and like that diplomas and stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the journey was essentially when I moved to France, then I did a degree in Chinese medicine randomly first. Then I didn't quite get into the Chinese philosophy around it. I figured that I have to learn the Chinese, language if I really want to understand Chinese medicine. But then I got interested in osteopathy, which is what I studied next. And then through osteopathy, I've been kind of like always going between the two worlds of learning something about coaching or learning something that's more manual therapy, kind of understanding physiology and anatomy. So yeah, I'm almost always on a journey to study something. I'd say most recently was Z Health. I did a kind of master practitioner kind of degree kind of thing. It wasn't university, but like a more private tuition. But now it's been a little while. That I followed like a longer formal curriculum of something that would take me years to accomplish. But I have my eyes on a couple of things at the moment that I'd like to pursue.
Yeah. I feel like learning Chinese would be a bit of an undertaking. I don't think there's many shared words between Finnish and Chinese somehow. Master
Maybe
probably different.
I think I feel like suklausina could be like universal. Yeah. Did you know that there is a Finnish word called rapakivi, which is the same in English? You might not know that word, but it's a specific type of rock. But that's an English word for this thing that's actually Finnish. So maybe it's the same in Chinese. So I could have a short conversation.
Maybe, yeah. Perhaps. Really topic specific conversation. Just
very
both
specific.
You and the Chinese guy just both pointing at a rock. And just that's it. One engagement.
And I go rapakivi and they go like, no, not rapakivi.
yeah. You just leave. Or if the entire wall of China was made of that one rock, you'd be fucking sorted. Like you'd never need to worry about. Yeah. You'd get a job. That could be it. You can go from Disney World to working on the Great Wall of China, just pointing at it, saying the name of the rock. Perfect. And then what was it then? So Chinese medicine, osteopathy, and then where does like CrossFit start to kind of creep in on the horizon?
So it was kind of like to do with the Wing Chun, so that Kung Fu. It was 2006, and or 2005, 2006. I was just looking for. I had done training like the when I was doing judo. Then I did like the 20 rep back squat kind of training and things like that. I was always curious. There was a website called Cyberpump back in the day. If you're very old school internet, you'd know that before T-Nation and all these kind of classics. And I was just looking around trying to find more information about training. I was curious, and I stumbled on the CrossFit.com website and just kind of got into it. I've told this story before, but I just remember when I tried my first workout and I was in Paris and I went to this woods to do this workout, and it was just a classic 4 rounds, 400-meter run and 50 air squats. And it was okay for the first round. And then somewhere between the second and third round, there was an old lady walking a dog who walked past me as I thought I was running at blazing speed. And I realized that there's something to this CrossFit methodology, because I was training so much. I was doing, the Kung Fu. I was doing 10 sessions a week of, 90 minutes. And I thought I was, in a decent shape. But turned out that I wasn't. And it was kind of love at first sight, or love at first terrible workout experience.
So we can thank that granny with her dog for the fact that you stuck with it all this time. If you breezed past her, you would have been like, "This is shit. It's boring. I'm sick of this." That's hilarious. Yeah. I wonder if that woman, if she ever like flicks on ESPN and she's like, "Holy shit!"
Maybe she was like French speed walking champion or something. I could have been betrayed by her hidden fitness. I don't know.
That's funny. And then you continued with the .com stuff, and was your training? I think I heard you talking about this. You're on Savan. The good thing about talking to you now is it's so long since I heard that interview at Savan that like as you're talking about stuff, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I remember him saying something about France before. So like it's nice that it's still new to me now.
It's not too fresh. Yeah,
you've actually timed this really well, Jami. Well done. Was all your training largely like that for a long time then, like .com, like that kind of guerrilla CrossFit stuff, like out in a park and carrying kettlebells places and stuff?
Yeah, I was at the university afterwards. So I was in France when I started, and then it was like another 6 months, a little more, before I moved to England to do the osteopathy degree. So I lived in London, I studied there, and I kind of I started training by myself and just following kind of the .com, and pretty early on I started to come up with my own workouts, trying to kind of like think about what would be another good workout apart from the .com stuff. I didn't do any weights at the beginning. I just didn't have access to a gym. But then when I got to London, I got access to a kind of university gym, which was pretty rubbish to be fair. But there was a rower, so then I started to do rowing intervals. And we had this great little gym in the actual building where I studied at the British School of Osteopathy, which is this tiny room, probably the size of this office that I'm in now. And it was dusty as hell. No one ever used it except me. And then I got a couple guys to use it. And I just have fond memories. My most epic CrossFit moment is probably doing 34 rounds of Cindy in that dusty room on a lunch break with like just like a beam this thick, like a pulley machine beam to do the pull-ups. And that was my peak fitness, my peak CrossFit fitness moment. But it was terrible to train there. I mean, it was like health hazard every time you would go there.
Yeah. Asbestos everywhere. Is that was you John Singleton was there too, is that right? Around that time?
Yeah. So John was the same year as me. I introduced him to CrossFit. He started training with me maybe a few years in. I started training with one guy first, and then I got John into it maybe on our third year of studies together, I want to say, perhaps. I think maybe 2009 I got him into CrossFit as well, and he started training with me. And we were training partners for a while through the university.
What age were you then? 2000. What age are you now?
I am still 40.
Wow. Okay. Still. What age were you then? So like peak fitness Cindy. What age were you then?
Yeah, like 28, 29, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
20. Yeah. No. 20, 26, 27. Sorry.
And were your parents still in Finland at this stage? So when you left for France, they were there, and then you went to London.
Yeah. They just stayed in Finland.
Okay. And were they happy, like just sending you off, like just like, all right, see you later, and then just getting the odd postcard or letter or whatever?
Yeah, or like, Mom, can you send me some money, kind of thing. I think I don't know that if they were happy or not, like by themselves. They were happy for me, and they were always so supportive of me. I'm very thankful that they didn't ever try to talk me out of it or anything. I think they understood. I mean, I moved out when I was 18, like as soon as I could. I moved out of the house and just rented a place myself, etc. So I think they were kind of used to the idea that this was me, and I was going to be abroad, but I'm also sure that they wished that I was, back home.
What did they do? What was their like jobs or whatever growing up?
My dad was into IT, so he did IT support for banks and then university. And my mom, she was secretary first at a bank. There was a big recession in Finland. A lot of banks went under, and the one where they worked that went under back in the early 90s. But then she worked at a fire station as a secretary as well.
Because I'm just thinking, like, it must be like I've tried to explain this to my dad, like the podcast and everything. Like, it's fucking a waste of time. Like, I just basically told him it's the radio, but on the internet. Because I was like, I don't know how else to explain it to him. But like, it must have been like, was it hard for your parents, do you think, to understand? Obviously they're supportive and everything, but to fully empathize or understand with, like, okay, he likes Bruce Lee, and then it's like, okay, he really likes Bruce Lee, and then it's like, all right, he's leaving to go and try and be like Bruce Lee. Like, was that do they think they fully understood like what you were trying to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure if they did. I think it, to their credit, I would probably like to say that whether they did or didn't, it was enough for them that I did.
Yeah.
That was always the feeling that I got. And then my dad unfortunately passed away last year, but he was really, that's okay. He was really into watching the competitions, like CrossFit competitions. He would always follow if I had athletes competing. He would always watch the games, Brogue, anything that he could watch, he would always be watching on YouTube or somewhere else.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That answers all the questions then, I guess. He's obviously just like unending support. Do you know, like, that's all you can really want from a parent, is to fake an interest enough that it turns into a real interest, basically.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
oh yeah, the CrossFit thing, yeah, and then that turns into like, oh, Annie did brilliant on that second workout in Rogue, and like, like, it turns into an actual vested interest.
In some ways, I think it helps when you do live far away, like all of a sudden these things start to matter more, probably because you feel, that you're further away from your son.
Yeah.
So maybe that played to my favor as well.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
In a sense.
I don't live particularly close to my dad, and he couldn't give a fuck though. So I don't know. We'll see. we'll test you. We'll test your theory, maybe. So my dad arrived in today. I came home from work. I collected my kids and came home. And he only lives, I'm only joking, he only lives about half an hour away. I see him like once a week. But he came in, and he's so like just so self-centered. Like, it's just, he's always just been like, I have this urgent problem that I need help with, and like, I cannot see anything else apart from, like, blinkers are on, And he goes, he said, he was walking up to me with two phones in his hand, like pieces of shit, like carved from wood phones. And he comes up, and both my kids are crying as I'm taking them out of the car, and like both of them crying, walking towards the door. And he's walking behind me with his phone in his hand. He goes like, I have a problem with my phone. And I was like, I have worse problems. Like, just like, I was like, just fuck off for 5 minutes. Like, I was like, come in and I get it done eventually. And I was like trying to sort out my kids, and my son was like crying nonstop. And then he banged his head and just fucking Armageddon. And dad was literally like a toddler, like walking after me all around the kitchen with these two phones in his hand. Like, and I was like, yeah, look, we'll get it sorted.
Right.
But yeah, then you like, no matter what you give out about, you're still like, yeah, still great that he's around and the kids get to see him and stuff, like, and who cares if he's stuck on his phone or whatever. You're in London then doing CrossFit, whatever, and you're doing, so you said you were kind of doing your own or making up your own workouts after a while. Is this like, had you like deep dived into the journal and stuff and like gone from there, or were you like looking at workouts being like, oh, I wonder what that would be like if you did 21 instead of like sets of whatever?
No, I'm definitely always been the person who, I'll know more about theory of something than I have physical ability to apply. Like, always, like, I'm practical, but I'm very into the understanding. Like, I need to understand how things work. So actually, when I was in Paris finishing my studies there, I was working. I now shifted to working at a hotel, and I was doing a night shift, and just like in this intercontinental hotel, so it's very fancy. The guest is always right, and you always find a solution to their problems. And I was doing that, just solving basically problems on the phone most of the time for them in the middle of the night. So this left me with a lot of time to print out CrossFit journals and to read all of them cover to cover multiple times. So I was like, I knew A to Z. I knew everything that was written about CrossFit. Like I had read everything. So there was that theoretical, but I'm always curious. I think that you have to experiment to understand something. So I was always curious to try things out from the very beginning. I would say it's like I see something and then it's like I have to try to tweak it somehow. I can't just take it.
Yeah. Don't accept it for what it is. Basically, you have to kind of fiddle with it. I like the idea of that company being like, why the fuck is our toner and our ink going so much and then there's this like stack of like a wall of books in your house.
It was a high stack. I mean, I printed so much, everything in color, of course, that was important.
Yeah, full color diagrams. So then at what point did you accept like, all right, I can't be absolutely ridiculously good at this, but I can make someone else be absolutely ridiculous, or I can help someone else get there? Was there kind of that kind of internal conversation, or was it more of a natural progression and you just kind of found yourself helping other people more so than just trying to better yourself?
No, there was like a very specific moment when I realized what my genetic potential was or wasn't. No, I was 2009. I competed at it was kind of called the sanctionals, or what was it called at the time? I think it was called sanctionals. It was essentially like this first year
or something, was it? Sectionals, maybe.
Sectionals could have been sectional. It was the very first time that you could compete in Europe.
That was the one you could just turn up at, wasn't it?
You could. There were 13 of us who turned up. One of the guys who turned up happened to be Mikko Salo. Which we had this, one of the workouts was like, it was a fun competition, but we had one of the workouts was heavy Helen, which is like just with 400-meter run. We had 32 kg kettlebell swings, which at the time 2009, that was and then chest to bar pull-ups, which was like and and there was a guy called Richard van Meerbeek there as well, who made it the games a couple of times, Belgian guy. And I just remember doing that workout, and I ran with Richard on the first round, which was the worst possible thing that I could have done. And then I remember dropping the kettlebell on my head twice on the second round, or like hitting myself on the way down because I was just so like out of it because I went way too hard. I had tried the workout in practice, and then I did it like on Monday because I was so pissed off that I didn't make the game. So I was like just out, and then I did it like 2 minutes faster because I just had some pacing. It's like a good lesson. But yeah, Mikko just absolutely, like, he would finish a workout and then go pick up his camera and take photos of people doing the workout. It was like the level of fitness that he had at the time relative to the community. It was just absurd, and I was like, wow, okay, so there is this completely different level that I'm clearly not at. And then 2010, he asked me to work with him. I was finishing my studies in osteopathy. He asked if I would come to Halmstad in Sweden for the sectionals, I think they were still called then, or semifinal. I don't remember. But
what role did he want you to do there?
To be his osteopath, like take care of his body. We had kind of established that relationship a little bit before, and we stayed in touch after the initial, when we met at the competition. And so it was kind of like, it was a big hustle for me to make it because I had absolutely no money when I was a student. Like I had to walk because I couldn't afford the bus kind of deal. And but I scraped together money to buy the flights with Ryanair, which is great. And then he paid for the hotel room for me to be able to stay there. And I had this massive exam the day before, or when I had to fly. So I had to like take this 4-hour exam in like an hour, and then get special permission to leave, so I could make the airport on the bus, from London for 3 hours with Ryanair flights and no money. So there was this like epic journey to make it there. And then it was at Halmstad that I also met Annie, and offered her, I saw, just the raw potential was there, but she hadn't been coached in CrossFit that much. So I was like, I think I can help you, like perfect timing, kind of. I think I can help you. And she was silly enough to believe that I could. And, that's when we started working together.
What a dumb move. What a major mistake that was. So you're obviously like, because like when I speak to you, or anytime I've spoken to you, or anytime I've heard you, you're very humble in like you rarely. I rarely hear you take credit for things. I rarely hear you say like, "Oh, it's because of me that this," or like, or I mean, you'd be a bit of a dick if you did, I guess. Like, but
Mm.
I never hear you like, lord it over any other coaches or say like, well, my programming is this or that or whatever. But
Mhm.
like, you obviously had confidence enough in what you were doing and what you knew, even at that stage, to say like, hey, I can help you. Obviously, you didn't know it was what Annie was going to turn into, like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you could see this is an athlete that like, oh, she's good, but if she just did this and this, that last workout would have been way better. So
Mhm.
then you approach, so like, you're obviously confident but just humble. Is that accurate? Like, you're confident in your abilities, you're confident in what you can do, but you just don't like toot your own horn kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think I'm confident in knowing that I'm going to be wrong no matter what. So just live with it in a sense. I think that anyone who pretends that they've kind of cracked the code on CrossFit programming, I mean, I don't think you aren't being honest with yourself. I think it's still such a new sport that we're still, trying to figure things out. And I think it's more about having the courage to try things out. Be confident enough that you're not so wrong that you're going to mess up someone who is so talented. I think that's already a big thing. I would rather look at it that way. I think when you think about programming, for example, for an athlete, one of the ways to look at it is like, first try not to be wrong, and then when you're not too wrong, then you try to be right, instead of try to be right from the beginning, because then you're more likely to be wrong and lead them in the wrong direction. So maybe it is like philosophies like that make it come across as as humble in a sense, but I probably I could probably like try to toot my own horn a little bit more than I do, but it's just not something that comes naturally to me. I'd rather acknowledge that I'm likely to be wrong, and I just try to be less wrong than other people are.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I have spoken about this to Can like at length about your reluctance, or either reluctance or inability to self promote. That's like,
Yeah.
like that, like, but then I suppose there's trappings that come with that. Like, if you do step into the spotlight, then you're in the spotlight and you're accessible, and you have to be accessible, and you're going to be asked for quotes, and you're going to be asked for, like, opinions. And then, if you're putting your opinion out there publicly and you're wrong, then you're going to be judged for that. And if you're, you know what I mean?
Mm,
There are like pitfalls to it too. Like,
sure.
sometimes you are better off just staying in, like, pardon the pun, but staying in your box and
Hmm.
working with the people that you trust and that trust you, and then just like letting the work speak for itself, I guess.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, I would say that obviously in this world right now, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger just came out with a new book that has a chapter called Sell, 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 and it worked out well for him. Of course, from a business perspective, it's probably smart to be able to self-promote more than I can, or have historically done. But at the same time, I would like to think that the work speaks for it. Work speaks for itself as well, and the people that I work closely with, they have stuck with me for a long time, probably also for a reason.
Mm. Um, yeah, Bernie Gannon says, I'm just going to keep saying this. So I usually watch like podcasts on my phone or on my laptop screen, and I forever thought that Bernie Gannon was wearing a George Washington style white wig, because like the white background.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was only yesterday that like I was on Savannah's show and he pulled up a comment and I saw Bernie Gannon and I was like, oh, he changed his picture. And I was like, no, wait a minute, that is the same picture. I just couldn't see it. Yeah, he's saying self praise is no praise. I mean, the thing is, like, self praise is no praise, but like I will always laugh at my own jokes if they're funny, and like technically that's self praise. But like, you have to laugh partially in case nobody else does, or like in case nobody realizes it's a joke. But like, self praise is kind of some praise. He also said earlier on, if this is true, this is an astonishing fact. With an average of 12 kilos per year, which is what, like 25 pounds, Finnish people drink more coffee per person than anyone else in the world per year. That is
Hmm.
nuts, if that's true. Does that sound right to you? Are you like, yeah, we're a big coffee drinking nation?
Yeah, we are a big coffee drinking nation. Now, there's a couple of things to know. First of all, 12 kilos a year is not that much. I mean, that's just, amateur stuff. But I guess it's okay for an average Finnish person, but just not.
Yeah.
No, I think
Well,
we do drink a
you're
lot of
taking
coffee.
into account there are people that don't. Like, I go through about a kilo, and okay, me and my wife go through about 1.5 kilos a month.
Yeah.
So that's
I think that's fair enough. Yeah. I think 12 kilos, it is obviously a lot. But Finnish people, there's a culture where you drink really weak coffee all the way through the day. So it's like the caffeine content is probably relatively low altogether. And then people just drink it, even at like just before they go to bed. It's a little crazy to me. I'm definitely more concentrate in the morning, early afternoon coffee guy.
Yeah, my dad he'll drink coffee at like 10 p.m. But it's like, that Maxwell House shit, like, like it's like just muck. I remember God, my dad is very prevalent in this episode for some reason. I remember when I was younger, I can't remember why, but I remember I was pissed off at him for something. And I said, do you want a cup of coffee? And he was like, yeah, because he always has them at like 9, 10 p.m. And I was about like 16. And I made him a Maxwell House with 7 teaspoons of Maxwell House. Like I just kept going. I was like, fucking dickhead. Like pouring it in, brought it into him. And either he didn't notice or he didn't let me know that he noticed. I reckon it's the latter. I reckon he was like, that motherfucker. But he was like, nice. Like,
I should have been like, the best coffee I ever had.
Yeah. Wow. You should make it every time. Yeah, that's funny. So approaching Annie, coaching Annie, was that a distance thing then, or were you like, I'll move to Iceland? Like, how did that work early doors?
Yeah, it was distance thing first. Like, I mean, sending some videos back and forth. The technology wasn't quite the same as it's now in terms of like distributing training programs, and just Skype calls at the time. And obviously at the games we worked in person, 2010 games. That was the first time that we actually got kind of like more hands-on. And then after that, I went to Iceland for some time, like not long time, like a little later on in that year, I went for like a week. And then it was kind of a little bit like that. I was in the seminar staff, the CrossFit Level 1 seminar staff, and she then got in the staff. And so we saw also at Level 1s, and I came to Iceland every now and then. She came to London. And then I lived in Iceland. I traveled for a period of time from 2014 to 2017. I was just like traveling on Airbnb and going back home to London and then traveling again for 3 months. So I spent some time in Iceland like that as well. But a lot of it has been distance. Apart from the last year and a few years, there's been like more and more contact time in the last few years. And now obviously I live in Iceland.
With the seminar staff thing, then did you stop doing that because like you felt like you kind of did your duty or served your time or whatever, or was it just that the training plan was becoming a beast that needed all your attention and like you could no longer share your time basically?
Yeah, a bit of both. I mean, I had done so many seminars at that time. It was about 5 years that I spent in seminar staff and at like accelerating rate, especially when I got to be a flow master or like run the gigs. Then I was just doing over 40 seminars a year. I think at some year I did like 48 weekends. I was away teaching, and plus some midweek seminars like level 2s. So it was also like I needed a little break. I had traveled so much, and I was teaching Kelly's Tourette's seminar as well at the same time. So it was like it was just becoming a little bit too much. So and the training plan was starting to grow. So it was like a little bit of both.
So was Annie? Were you coaching other people as well as Annie, or was Annie like your only focus for the early doors, say?
No. So at the beginning, like the first games, it was really, I went to help Mikko as an osteopath, and then in 2010, and then Sveinbjörnsson from Iceland was competing. So I was, coaching both him and Annie at the beginning. And then after that, there were some people just kind of like started to reach out to me. This is kind of like how I ended up starting the training plan, is that more and more people start to reach out to me, and I just start to feel like it's not efficient use of my time to just write these individual programs, especially if it's people who, they were maybe not yet at that level where there's obviously an upside to individual attention and individualized programming, but it's also like little pretentious to know that you know exactly the right program for this person that is optimal. So that's kind of started to be the seeds of the idea of programming for, doing training plan. But there was Numi Katrinason who competed at the games, Lucas Höyberg, Pierre Quinn joined early on as well. He started on a training plan first, did that, and then, qualified for the games for the first time, just doing the programming. And then we started working more closely together from there.
the couple of times that I spoke to BK and Can, he's like one of your more recent athletes, I guess. One of the things that they both say frequently is that like you do things. Say you could have them doing something now that in about 6 months or 8 months will suddenly be the new like buzz thing that everyone's talking about, and they're like, yeah, we've done this, like we've been doing this since like 18 months ago or whatever. Those kind of things, like you mentioned that you kind of test things and that you like to tweak things and do things a bit differently or whatever. Is that like just experience and time? Is it curiosity? Is it like, do you just does part of you just kind of view them as guinea pigs and be like, I wonder how BK would react if I did like 3 minutes of cold therapy and then what, like that kind of way? Is that like, is that how your brain functions, that you just kind of want to experiment on them basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. I am like, curiosity definitely is like a driving characteristic for me. But I think a lot of it's to do with like, I think that the fundamentals are the most important thing for any athlete, and you have to keep repeating those fundamentals all through your career. It's always good to be strong. It's always good to have strong conditioning base. It's always good to move well. But then I have to kind of make the assumption at the high level that everyone's doing it. Whether they are or not is another matter, but I have to make the assumption as a coach that they are. So it's like, we need to do those things really, really well. And then like, if we don't do those well, the other stuff doesn't matter. But if we do those well, then it's my job, it's my role, it's my responsibility to go look what's on the edges, what's happening in the performance world as a whole beyond our sport, which is where I would try to look for most, like not what people are doing in CrossFit, but what people are doing outside of CrossFit. What can we learn? And then try to bring things in, either whether it's in the form of like an expert who can tell us something, or whether it's in just like, hey, there is this thing that we haven't considered, or there's this thing, or hey, everyone in this running community is doing this. It's like, surely there's something to it. Like, we must try it. So there is this curiosity. And I think it's also keeping things interesting. For me, like, I've been coaching for a long time, and I want to stick to the foundations because they are the foundations, and it's really important not to forget them, and that takes discipline. But then beyond that, I'm a really curious person, so I need to, like, I have this urge to go and explore. And I would hate that we would not have the results we had because someone else figured something out that had been already worked out in a different sport, but they did it before us in this sport. Like, I very much want to be doing things that other people are not even thinking about.
And there's obviously a certain level of trust there as well, that the athletes have to be like, sure, yeah, I'll do it, and not be like, why are we doing this? Like, what's...
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of gone off it for a little bit now, but we've been doing, for example, brain endurance training for the last 3 years, and I don't think anyone's...
Explain that to me. Like I'm 5. Explain it like I'm 5.
Yeah, so you could say that there is this idea or concept that fatigue is really a perception. It's an opinion of your brain that thinks that the reward that you're getting from doing this is no longer worth the price, right? So it's like an opinion. It's not worth it anymore. But that's based partially, there is a, let's say, neurological correlates to this in the brain, where you can train specifically certain brain areas doing specific tasks, and you can combine this with training, doing your regular training. For example, in the rest periods between the intervals, you could be playing a game that is specific to activate these specific brain areas, so that you can build resilience into them under those conditions. I mean, I guess in our sport, for example, a simple thing that, like, Matt Fraser has talked about this in the past. I was like, yes, he's smart. He was talking about like doing math in his head while he was working out. This is an example of brain endurance training. Whether he thought about it as brain endurance training or not, essentially he's adding this kind of like additional stimulus that his frontal lobe needs to pay attention. This is not a 5-year-old explanation. I'm really sorry. I got off on a tangent.
I can follow.
Yeah. So essentially, he's giving himself a task. Okay, I'm doing something really hard, but I also need to go, okay, what's 3 + 7? What's 15 × 3? And I need to do this math in my head, and I'm trying to do it fast. So there is this extra cognitive load that's making everything harder. And then when you take it off, when you're competing, it's like, It's like we're doing training with weighted vests and you took it off.
So he's not distracting himself from the pain that he's incurring through his physical movements. It's not a distraction thing. It's like train heavy, race light. It's like think loads when you're training and then just switch off and find flow when you're competing, and you'll hit a new gear basically.
Yeah, and this is like a relatively well-researched phenomenon now, that you can actually improve your endurance in like bike time trials and things like that this is significant. I mean, if again, a lot of the professional football teams are doing this, a lot of Formula One drivers are doing this, a lot of Tour de France cyclists are doing this, a lot of the top triathletes are doing this. It's just, it's like one more thing you have to do. So then it becomes how do you integrate this into your training? And
how
that's
how did you find it? Did you find like, oh shit, yeah, this is good stuff, like they're reacting well to it?
So I was always interested in neurology a lot and understanding the brain. And I did this 5 years study essentially of understanding the nervous system and the brain's role in movement and fatigue and performance. So that was like the previous kind of like longer study curriculum that I followed. So then I was kind of well primed to understand this topic. And then I reached out to a guy who's been working on Formula One and developed some software around this. And we got talking, and I did some, things with him.
And what are you like? It's good stuff.
It's good stuff. The challenge is that at any given time,
you obviously assume you need to be at a certain level to even bother considering this.
Exactly. It's not for most people. For some people, it could be the low hanging fruit, but like for most people, it's not. It's just like, again, if your foundations are not there, if you're not doing the fundamentals,
if you're getting takeaways every night, there's no point taking creatine and protein. Like taking loads of pills, like.
Right. I would argue that there's still point in taking the creatine and protein, because those habits might then instill you not to do those things. Maybe. But yeah, absolutely. It's like, this is not relevant for 99.99% of the population at all.
What about other stuff? Like I heard someone told me at the weekend they were what did they take? It was like chewable nicotine, basically, like without the any of the bad shit. It was literally just the nicotine. And they said, oh, the whole Man City squad are doing this because it's like a focus.
Yeah, cognitive focus. Yeah, like a nootropic. Nicotine is nootropic. It'll help you reduce anxiety and be more focused.
I asked him, was he are you trying to get into smoking? Like, is this your gateway?
Yeah, gateway drug.
What about stuff like that? Like, because obviously you have to be very careful with stuff like that. If there's testing and all that kind of stuff, you don't want to ruin someone's career by being like, oh shit, we shouldn't have tried that thing.
I'm super cautious when it comes to anything supplements. I mean, it's just like a silly thing to happen. Like I'm basically, the relationship that I have with the athletes that I work with, especially those that I work longest and closest, is that they will tell me if they're taking something, like in terms of like they are sick and they're asking me like, hey, can I take this medication? And I go and check on the, it's like Global Draw is like a page you can check, or like check basically USADA or WADA, databases, to make sure that we are not taking anything that they cannot take. And I'm very cautious. I mean, I think that there are a few supplements that really work, that there's a really strong evidence, like creatine is one of them, for example. Caffeine is another one that definitely works. But then there's a lot of supplements that could be okay, but every time you take something that could be okay, there's always a risk that it's contaminated. So I'm very cautious when it comes to supplements, for sure.
Are you surprised there's as many positive drug samples in CrossFit and stuff? Like, does that, like, when you hear of someone popping, are you like, oh fuck's sake, like just be more careful? Or are you like, yeah, like not surprised by that at all? The stuff I've seen and heard, this isn't a shock at all.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be like to anyone, just be more careful. I mean, I hope that if people do drugs, that they get caught. I think that's good. That's a good thing.
I meant be more careful as in like,
don't take something.
Yeah, forget. Like you often say like, I didn't realize it was, I'm going on. Yeah. I'm pretending I believe their story, and I'm saying, well, just be more careful. Then. Not like hide your syringes and shit. Like,
yeah. Okay, so I would say that obviously anything could happen. Like I'm careful. Like if we go, like before Rogues, we go to a restaurant. And I'm going to be like, hey, where is your meat coming from? And they say Mexico. And I'm like, it could be okay, but it could not be. That there's a higher chance that they're using something in there than it's coming from Canada. It's like, bad example, maybe there's nothing bad with Mexican beef, I'm sure, but like I'm just like running probabilities. I'm always running probabilities in my head. But I'm not surprised that people get caught, because surely there's so many people participating in CrossFit as a sport that somebody is always using. It's like any other sport. What I'm always disappointed about is when I speak about CrossFit with people who don't know anything about CrossFit, that they make the assumption that everyone is using, which I think is not true. Obviously some people have got caught using. Some people probably have got away using as well. Like that would happen in any sport. But yeah, it's always disappointing. It's a little bit, it doesn't touch me so much if it's like a masters athlete, that I don't work with so many masters athletes. Like I'm not as connected, but when it's an individual athlete, for example, from the games, it's always disappointing, because most of the time you've met them, you spoke with them, and you would like to believe that everyone's playing the fair game.
Does it surprise you? So like say, Andrew Hiller's made a few videos about like, are certain athletes like natural or not natural, and like he's questioning the validity of their gains, we'll say. Does it surprise you, given how many people assume like, oh well, everyone's on something then, does it surprise you that more people, having been around CrossFit since like day dot, and been around competitive CrossFit for a good chunk of that time as well, having seen a lot, talked to a lot of people, heard a lot of stories, that kind of stuff, does it surprise you that more people don't get caught then in the individual? Because we've only had like one or two high profile ones. Do you think that is that a low number, do you think, or do you think is it about right?
It's obviously hard to say. It's hard to know the truth when you don't know the truth. You can just believe what people say. But I would say this is that the sport is still relatively young, and I think we are still, we've had the athletes who've been around for a really long time have probably self-selected for this sport because they have good ability, good genetic potential to be good at this sport, or they have the right sporting background. I don't think anyone gets to the CrossFit Games by accident. Like normal people don't compete at CrossFit Games individual. Like they just don't. It doesn't matter really how hard you're working. You need to have some level of ability, because there are, hundreds, if thousands of people who are working very, very hard. It's hard to work that much harder, and they are not making it, if that makes sense. So there's already like a genetic selection for the game. So in some ways, it doesn't surprise me, because I think that the people are more and more, like over time as the sport evolves, we'll see more and more people selecting that have, if there's more money, more incentives for athletes, you're going to get better and better athletes as the time goes by. So it doesn't surprise me in a sense that there is essentially like a little bit of a Darwinian selection of people who make it to the games every year.
So would it be the kind of outliers then that you'd be like, oh, maybe someone should test that person? Like if someone just randomly makes it to the games having been nowhere, would you be like, maybe that person, maybe check that?
I mean, I think it's like, wanting to answer this politically correctly, right? Like I think it's like there's a cultural aspect to this. It's like, if you come from countries where the testing is traditionally very rigorous, or then you come from countries where the testing is not as rigorous traditionally, if you look at Olympic sports, you can make some statistical, again, like assumptions in your head. And I think that's okay, that informs your thinking a little bit. But I'd say like there are obviously physical features that you could look at, like the shape of the face of a person, the shape of the deltoids, the shape of their pecs. That there are some physical characteristics, the skin condition, that are probably common for people who use, especially like anabolic steroids and things like that. But then I think that the other aspect is that if somebody makes a very significant leap in their performance in a single season, either they figured something out, they found the right environment for them, they found the right training program for them, they maybe resolved some underlying issue, some deficiency or something that was really holding them back, they were anemic, something like that, or perhaps they chose a different route. But it's again one of those things that you can only speculate, right? Like I don't want to ever claim that I know if someone did or didn't do something unless they tell me directly, or I see them do it, or they get busted in a test. It's like, it's one of those things. It's very easy to speculate and say things about people, but it's actually really, really hard to know. Like, again, some people just genetically have these crazy bodies, that we see in the sport. And then some people probably don't genetically have those bodies, but they just, got there another way.
With your analysis there, you could probably make your own natty or not videos. It sounds like you have a similar amount of insight to Hiller. Jack says, how did you feel when Ricky got caught, especially while being was he with the training plan?
Yeah, so I coached Ricky. So there was a period of time when I coached Ricky. He was on the training plan. I coached Ben Garard, his brother, and then I coached Ricky. These are the things like people don't know, right? I coached Ricky the year that he got caught using the drugs. I mean, I was in London and he was in Australia, so it's like extremely hard for me to know what was going on. I felt betrayed based on the conversations.
Yeah. During that season, were you like, just say all the things that you've just said of those body changes, those sudden leaps in performance? Was there any part of you that was like, am I the right training plan for him? Is there something else going on?
No, I would say, if you look at Ricky is a beast of an athlete. He has a crazy mindset. And when, I lived in Australia for 3 months with Ben, essentially Ben Garard, his brother, and everything I saw about Ricky, he was just doing the right things. He was so meticulous with everything. I just felt like he was an athlete who had the potential, who went all in and had some guidance, like that's how I felt at the time. But then, afterwards I could have had, we were like, just before the games, we were like here and staying here and training, and they were staying here and training. We would kept inviting like, hey, Ricky, it's a short drive, like come and train with us. And he wouldn't. There were like some things that after the fact.
Yeah, with hindsight, yeah.
With hindsight, it's easy to say like I should have seen the signs, but I was completely blindsided by it. I mean, they to be fair, like I had Ben, when they knew, before the public knew, Ben reached out to me and was like telling me about this, and I was obviously like, what's happening here? I had absolutely no idea. So that was like me losing some of my naivety around drugs in this sport with what happened. But yeah, it was a hard thing to get over, but now it's absolutely fine. It's water under the bridge. There's no problems with those guys. And I feel like Ricky's worked really hard and had a lot of guts to come back. After it, most people would have quit and would have not waited for 4 years. And so, all the kudos for him. And I can only assume that he's doing things the right way now.
Yeah. There was a more lighthearted comment. I can't, like, fucking Rambler, man. I can't find any comments because you're just constantly commenting. Like, it's so hard to find where the other fucking comments.
I just thought that no one's commenting,
Oh, he's like this one guy, and he's just like, his fingers must be on fire. It's just constant. Shit, I can't find it. Someone said hello from CrossFit Pontelac. Kate or something. Where the fuck
hello? Yeah, we've trained there many times before the games. Very nice.
She's gone. I can't find her. Sorry. You can blame Rambler. Like, literally, there's about 400 comments, and they're all him. Okay. Yeah, that's remarkable. When they called you to tell you, were they like, hey, Ricky fucked up and he took this, or was it the same like until recently? Like, did you find out with the rest of us that like, no, actually I knew what I was doing? Like, was it like, what? I don't understand this, like when they were talking to you, or were they like, yeah, he fucked up?
Let's say it was a little 50-50 without going into like too much into details out of respect for them.
Would you say then that you have almost like kind of is it like loyalty? Is it kind of like, do you feel like some kind of almost like Hippocratic oath that it's like, well, that's not my news to share. So like when everyone's talking about it, you're just like, I'm not even like going there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not for me to share. Like I obviously want to have my conversations with them because of how I felt about the situation. I put all my trust into them in the process, and I wasn't aware of this at any point. And obviously they would not tell me because I don't know what I would have done. I would have either told them that you stop immediately. I would have told like, well, you have to come clean. Like, this is it. Like I'm very much like, we're the guys who at the games, if there's a water bottle that's open that we don't know what it is, we'll never drink it. If I leave a water bottle somewhere and it's Annie's bottle, she's never going to drink it from that again because we left it. You know what I mean? Like I'm the overtly cautious guy, and they maybe knew it. So they probably just decided it's best that I'm not into this at all, and I wouldn't have been.
We can't tell him. He makes us throw out our bottles when he's here. We can't tell him.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask then, with so obviously this weekend or this month we'll see Tia coming back postpartum, coming back to compete, and you've obviously gone through that route with Annie of taking her from pregnancy through to becoming a parent, through to like going back and finding her, you know, fitness again, and then utilizing her fitness in remarkable ways, and like, you know, just an absolutely outstanding return to the games when she came back, and then team and everything else. Like, there's obviously, like, when you think of longevity in CrossFit, like, she pops into your head straight away. Like, she's the first person that pops into my head when I think of like the long-term competitor. Like, how much say or control or whatever do you have as a coach in that? Like, are you literally just sitting back and saying she'll come to me when she's ready and she has her decision made, or are you like involved in like, hey Jami, I'm thinking that I might go back and I might compete, and you're like, no, like, we'll see what happens? But you know, like, how much coach athlete relationship is it, and how much is it she just comes to you and says, hey, I'm ready, I want to start again?
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's like it's her journey, right? And I'm here to guide her on that journey if she so chooses. So it's like, I don't think it's for me to tell her. Like, I think that there are coaches who want to win through their athletes, but for me, it's about helping the athletes to accomplish what they want to accomplish, you know, pursue dreams that are worthwhile pursuing. So I think for me, it's very obvious that I'll wait. You know, I might ask her, I might raise the conversation as, what are you thinking for the next thing? But like, we've gone from season to season for like a very long time with Annie. Like, you know, we do one season and then we assess, and then she'll let me know. We'll start training, but then she'll let me know. We have some kind of a deadline at what point we need to know, but then she'll let me know if she wants to go for one more year, versus me being like, hey, you need to compete for 3 more years because we can do this and that. It's like, it's absolutely has to come from her. And I think that's kind of part of the trust that we have. I have a feeling, I think I always have a feeling as to what's going to come. I might be surprised, but I think most of the time with like Danny, I've just kind of known what she's going to decide, maybe before she decides it or tells me, just reading body language, how she approaches training. You know, I've known her for so long, you know, that you just learn to read the signs.
Has she made her decision for this year yet?
No. It's too early.
No. Okay.
Too early.
It's too early now. It's too early.
Yeah, I mean, we're training. We're not. Don't get me wrong. It's like, it's kind of like train until you choose not to train, kind of thing. You can't afford to take that much time. You know, you need to start working on the things that you need to work on. Of course,
just in case, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's basically like, hey, let's train as if you were going to compete, and then you let me know if you don't. Because if you go the other way, and you know it's January and we're making decisions, it's like we lost, you know, 4 months.
So when do you what is your deadline for knowing? Like, is it that it's not January? That's very late, is it not?
No, I mean, think about it this way. It's like, now we had like 3 weeks maybe after games of just do whatever you want to do, and then we're back to training. So it's like, it's not like we haven't been training. So because the approach is that we will train until you tell me not to. It's fine. You know, I'm just like, the workouts keep coming, you know, I'll do this.
Do you program differently in, obviously, like the stage of the season is different, so I'm assuming the programming is different, but like, are you a gentler coach? Like, are you like, I don't want to piss her off and like, I don't want to give her something rotten and have her turn around and be like, fuck it, I'm done? So do you like program gentler in this period then?
No, it's more thinking of, you know, the years that she's trained, or like with Annie, with Pierre, you know, they've been around so long. So it's more about thinking of like, how can we make progress? Like, what's the minimum amount of things that we can do? What's the least amount of stimulus we can give to make progress? Instead of like, what's the absolute maximum workload that I could crush you under and make you hate yourself, you know, in September, October. That's not the approach. It's more about what's the least that we can do that's still going to help you make progress. And I think that's been the philosophy all the time. And that's why they can compete, you know, still after 10 years, you know, even more for Annie, because there needs to be a gentler part to the season. It doesn't mean that the work is less intentional or, you know, less purposeful, but it's, you know, we are certainly not hitting CrossFit workouts every day, all season. Like, that's not what the training looks like.
That brings up another one then of like this or last year, like not the season just gone by, the season before. You ventured into team competition, and you had Annie and you had Khan and Tola and Lauren, and that brought with it a lot of external pressure, a lot of like assumption, a lot of like, oh, it's a 2-horse fight, and you know, like, or 2-horse race, 2-man fight, I don't know.
2-horse fight.
Like boxing gloves.
Maybe.
But you know, a lot of pressure came with that, a lot of attention came with that, a lot of like, basically if they didn't, it's almost like if they didn't win or finish second, it wasn't going to be a success. And I'm sure you guys had a different metric for success, but the external one, that seemed to be the story that was being told. I guess I've a couple of questions about it. Like, one, did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy coaching a team? And like, I guess that team specifically, but just any team, like, is that something that you're interested in doing and enjoyed? What, like, is it something that you think you'll do again? Like, can we expect another Reykjavik team like this year, next year?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would say I enjoyed the experience. I would say that, of course, for us, success would have been to be on the top of the podium. I mean, that's why people moved from around the world to be here and to work together towards this shared goal. So I would say that, you know, we didn't succeed, but it certainly wasn't a failure from a perspective of, you know, everything that comes from the journey. So there is obviously that one weekend in August, and then there's the rest of the year, and they both have a lot of value. Probably the games weekend has less value overall in you know, than the journey that you're on. But of course, that's the metric that people use to measure your success. It doesn't matter what you do in training if you can't then execute in the competition. And unfortunately, we had the injury with Lauren just before the games as well. So yeah, so it was an enjoyable experience. It was also the most stressful kind of games experience. It was kind of the worst year for me at the games as a coach, but it also was, you know, a rewarding year of coaching these individuals into this team. Now, whether I would do it again or not, I think with the right people, I would do it again. But I wouldn't necessarily, you know, put together a team that might be on the 27th spot at the games. That would not be very interesting. But if we could have a team that could be on the podium, then I think that would be interesting.
So if like BK and Khan came to you and said, "Hey, we have an idea," you'd be like, "I'm listening." But if it was like me, you'd be like, "No, it's okay."
Yeah, maybe. I mean, who knows? Maybe you have some hidden talents. You'd be a great team athlete. We'll never know.
I'd be a good worm. I could
good worm.
Be the worm, like literally.
Yeah, you could be the substitute athlete that we use as a worm when we don't have one.
Exactly. Yeah. Third choice.
Yeah.
With Lauren's injury, then, is that like, so that I was kind of curious when you're talking about Annie and BK and stuff in the 10 years thing. I'm wondering, like, I guess Lauren's a good example to use. So she was obviously had a niggle. She was injured, like she was quite injured, and it seemed like, you know, a lot of things were okay. It was just one or two things like consistently caused a problem, was what I heard just before the games. And obviously there's, in different sports, in like soccer, football, like basketball, whatever, the coach is the one that says, "Hey, no, fuck off. Like, you're hurt. We need our strongest team out there," whatever. And you obviously had an alternate there in Katrin because she hadn't qualified as an individual. In that kind of scenario, like, it's obviously, because CrossFit is kind of a different sport to those other team sports. Like, it's not as impersonal. Is that the right word? It's like, it's more like there's more of a focus on the relationship, I guess, or importance to the relationship. Is it hard then to say, "Hey, no," like, you know, is it less your call, do you think, and more the athlete's call? Like, are you kind of waiting for the athlete to say, I kind of think I need to withdraw here," which because of the type of people that do CrossFit and those like genetic freaks that you've mentioned that make it to that level, they're also like mental freaks. Like
Sure, that's part of it. That
yeah,
has
they're
to be part
wired
of it.
differently, so they're far less likely to be the one to come to you and say, I can't do this. Like they'll be like, fuck it, I'll try it. So
Yeah.
is it a difficult juxtaposition there to be like, I know that they're not okay, but I can't make the call, but they probably won't make the call. You know, is that like a
Yeah,
rock
I
and
hear
hard
you.
place?
I hear you. Yeah, it was hard. I mean, it was definitely hard. And I think for me, I think for me, it was like a learning experience as a coach, because I'm used to coaching individual athletes. So I'm so used to considering the individual, and in this case, I could have the decision was mine and Annie's, we were kind of to make a decision. So I think, if I would go to that moment again, I would choose differently. I have to admit, because I would now have the mindset of being more of a team coach and be like, hey, it's really about the team doing as well as they could. So if I could go back, I would be like, hey, you're injured. I would love to have you in the team, but we need to have the best possible team. And then I would pick Katrin. I mean, I think in hindsight now, knowing what I know, it would be, I think what almost any team sport coach would have decided, kind of like what you alluded to. That would have been like an easy choice for a lot of people. It was an excruciatingly difficult choice for us. And we tried to really,
it's made harder with the fact that it was Iceland and that there've been so much upheaval to make the team happen that then you're like, man, she sacrificed so much that it's like it's a shit move then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of like considering the individual. For me, it's like athletes are people too, and those people as individuals, as human beings, to me are more important than those individuals as athletes. But in that context, in that moment, maybe in a sense, the decision for the team, not for me or not for anyone else, maybe just for that team, for that group of people who came together to pursue that goal, the right decision might have been to, just sub the injured athlete out, regardless of who it would have been, and sub a healthy athlete in, of course, and then we might have had a different outcome. But hindsight, it's very easy. But I've certainly learned some lessons from those games.
If BK came to you, and I'm not saying that this conversation needs to happen this year, certainly not. But if BK came to you at some point and said, yeah, let's go, I want to go again, and you were like, really? Like after last year, like you really do you just trust that, okay, he's obviously driven, he'll do it? Or like, do you think that a point will ever come for you to go like, I think you might have peaked, like I think maybe we've done it, so you need to look at other things?
Oh, funny. I don't think that he would. It's kind of a little bit like I've had this conversation before with Mikko Salo. Like, he decided to not compete as an individual at a certain point. And I think that these guys, just the mindset that Annie or Björk, any one of these guys, Jon, Henrik, they have is that they're not going to go there to participate. It's just not interesting. Yeah. They've done it. They've been there, done that. It's not what they pursue. Annie was not happy with her performance at the games and the outcome this year at the games. And rightly so, because we're going for the podium every time we go. And I think that's just normal. So I think that the athletes will know. They'll know if they have the, well, first of all, they know what it takes, the amount of commitment, sacrifice, discipline, intent that it takes to get there. So if they don't feel like they can commit to that, they will not pursue it. But as long as they feel like they can commit to it and it's realistic and their body will be able to hold up to that, because they're putting themselves through a lot, then I don't think it's going to ever be a problem. I think he'll let me know that he's done before I have to be like, hey, it's time to.
Yeah, I reckon that'll be around 2034 or so, around that time.
Something like that.
What about then? You've coached a lot of athletes over the years. Like there's been a lot of athletes that came to you and that have since left. Like BK and Annie are probably the constants, like the consistent ones. And you have people like Jana and Heinrich coming on and stuff. But when an athlete comes, we'll say like those kind of games caliber athletes, when they come and they work with you and it doesn't result in like major success and they leave, do you just like compartmentalize that, or do you see that as a self-failing? Do you feel it just as a failing in relationship? Do you feel it as like, oh, maybe this programming didn't align with what they were doing, or maybe there was external factors? Like how do you overcome those kind of speed bumps?
Yeah, I think of course it's always disappointing when you don't reach the goal that you set together, especially when you work very hard to accomplish it. But I would say, there are different things that are really, really important. I think it's really important that you trust the athlete. It's important the athlete trusts you, and it's very important that the athlete trusts what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's a combination of what the programming is and what is that they are putting in to execute that programming the best of their capacity. And I think those things are all very important to build confidence. There's this nice quote that confidence comes from competence and competence comes from repetition. And I think you have to trust those repetitions that you're doing in practice. And, for example, for me, how I think about training is not like it's influenced by the traditional CrossFit culture and certainly the roots of where these things come from, but it's also influenced by so many other things that the training looks very different for these guys than it does, I would say, for large group of people. And then when you're used to training one way and you come across a very different way of training, you have to learn to trust that training, and you have to learn to kind of like do that training with the appropriate manner. And then on the other hand, I need to be able to adjust to the expectations of the athlete and what their background is and what their experience is. And then sometimes with having so many variables, to match in the sense that they just don't match. Or sometimes it just requires more time. Like I think with Katrin, I always said to her from the beginning, I think she needs 2 years to be really back where she is. And now she is, back kind of like where she was this year. And I think it's like, I always felt like she needed that time. But of course, I also really wanted her to make it back to the games. And there were just a couple of tactical mistakes that happened. And she also had a very difficult semifinals, for example, in terms of the events, like with the muscle ups and the rope climbs. There were like a lot of things that made it very challenging. Making no excuses there, but it was like a difficult package for us to bring together, and we didn't succeed. And if I feel like I've done my utmost, and I feel like the athlete did the best that they could as well, then I don't have any regrets. It's like we did the best we could, and then we have to learn. And it's an iterative process working with athletes. You learn every year you work with them. Every time you work with them, you learn something new, especially if you're interested and curious about the journey, and the process gets better.
When someone like Jana comes to you, then are you like, fuck yes? Like when someone who's been around the sport loads, like is almost like so consistent, like with performances, like you can, he's literally like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, like every second year. But he has these like wheelhouse workouts that he dominates. He's like, he's so driven in his training. Like it's like he really cares about it. He's really focused on it. Are you like, brilliant, yeah, come on? Or is there any kind of reluctance there of like, well, shit, this guy's already really good. That's a bit of pressure to, like, if he joins, I have to make him better, and he's already really good.
Sure, absolutely. It's harder to squeeze out those last percentages or tenths of a percent from someone. Then it's always, I'm like, oh, it's so easy in a good way to train amateur athletes or people who are just starting out, or people who are so far away from the genetic potential. It's obviously easy to look really smart when you work with people who could do, they have so many low-hanging fruit around them, but with guys like Jonne, of course, there is always a risk associated with that, and you have to choose again, is that risk worth the reward? And that is as much to do with if you believe that the athlete has the potential to do well, that's important, but also like, would you enjoy working with this person? Because it's going to get very intense working with them. It's a long-term commitment. For me, it's like doing one season with an athlete is like, in a sense, that's nothing. That's such a short period of time. I think it's more about establishing these relationships that last for years. Are you willing to commit the next 5 years of your life to helping this person to pursue their journey? If the answer is no, then it's probably not going to happen.
Do you get angry with your athletes? Like, do you shout at them, and like, or are you, because you seem very stoic, like it's a Finnish thing, isn't it, to be like non-emotive, really?
Yeah. No, I don't get angry with my athletes. I think that the only time that I would say I do not typically get angry with the athletes. I would say the only time I might get angry with them if they're really putting themselves down, if they're having big moments of doubt, I just get upset because they're so great. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they're so amazing that if they afford themselves to go really, really deep into like, oh my God, then that's the only moment that really kind of annoys me. But like, it doesn't really happen. So no, I don't really get angry with the athletes because, again, I'm thinking of outcomes. in terms of what is that going to accomplish? Like how will their journey be better? How will this training session be better? How is this competition going to be better if I get upset with them? It's probably not. It's more about me. If I get upset with them, then it's about them. And the only right time to get upset with them is if there's an upside to them. If I get upset, if it puts some fire in their belly.
A bit like it's basically the opposite of my parenting style. It's like, how can I make this situation worse? I know I'll get angry. I know we've been talking a long time. I'm finished up. I just have a couple of little topics that are burning. With other training camps, then you mentioned that you brought John Singleton into CrossFit. You introduced him to CrossFit all those years ago when you were both like spry young lads in London. Is there like, do you get on well with the other coaches? Is there like not animosity, but like maybe a touch of unhealthy competitiveness between the coaches? Like, is there any? Because I'm even thinking that there are some athletes who have trained with John and then trained with you, or vice versa, or there's some crossover, especially being in Europe. But even like more globally, like you mentioned, Catherine left and like then she went to HWPO. So like that's more competition. Like, do you view the other training camps as a competition, or are you just like, fuck them, let them do whatever they want, we'll do what we're doing, and then at courtside or whatever, you're all arm around the shoulder, pally, or is there any kind of like standoffishness?
No, I don't experience really standoffishness between the training camps. I think, of course, like your athletes are competing against the athletes that you work with. I don't like owning athletes; they're not my athletes, but the athletes that I work with, are competing against the athletes that they work with. There is obviously inherent competition there, but it's not like I'm not going to go slitting somebody's Achilles or something like that in an attempt to, slow them down to get the water bottle to the athlete. I don't think there's anything like that. Again, I'm honestly, like, as a person, for me, it's not interesting to try to do like if somebody's doing something, I'm really not interested in trying to do that better. I'm really interested in doing things that other people are not even thinking about. Like that's what drives me. I want to be doing those things. And that's what's interesting to me, especially working with individual athletes. And so, yes, I mean, the other training camps are competition in very concrete terms when we go to games, Rogue, anything like that. But I don't think that there's any animosity or like. Obviously, I'd be upset if people would be like, "Hey, come and train with me. We are so good. Come and train with me." Like, but I don't experience that kind of behavior, especially with the athletes.
Have you ever experienced that?
No, I'd say that the athletes that I work with the longest are the people that have learned to trust me and that I trust. And that trust is really the key component of that relationship. So if you work with someone for a short period of time, it's not really enough to establish that trust yet. I think it's a long-term thing. It's like you meet someone and you become friends. It's going to take you a long time before they are best pals. And I think it's very much like that. So I think it's like that there is a bit of a, let's say, honeymoon period where it's not that it's fair game, but I'm not so upset. I'd be upset if Annie would now go train with someone else. I would consider that to be a personal failure, that I could not provide to her what she needed. I could not adapt myself. But otherwise, no.
Yeah. So Rogue, then that's in like three weeks. No.
Yeah, a little under, kind of that. Yeah.
And then do you know beyond October, like what you're doing? Like, are you kind of wait? Like, cause like, so we'll like BK, has he decided yet?
Yeah, he's competing.
Okay, so you've a sole focus there.
Yeah,
at least. Worst
BK,
case.
Henrik, those guys.
Yeah. So the three guys, is he kind of just seeing what happens with his back? Basically, is that the plan? Just see.
We just need to see where we can get his body. Like, what can we put together in time for the season? But
Gladiators will help, I'm sure. That'll make it.
Yeah, that was great.
It'll either fuck him or he'll be great afterwards.
That's fantastic. That's done, luckily, and now he's still alive. I just had a call with him the other day, so he's still alive. So that's a good sign. Yeah, I mean, Khan, definitely. We'll see how his body.
I know the last time I spoke to him, his plan was summer essentially, or like start the summer at least in Australia, as in their summer, our winter, and then come to Iceland. Is that still like
hopefully
body pending, I guess?
Yeah, hopefully we get him here sometime in November, maybe late November. From there, he has some obligations with the show and things like that he needs to fulfill, of course. But it's not easy being a gladiator. But yeah, we'll just have to see a little bit. He's a beast, like if we can bring him, have a healthy season, and I'm like very confident in his ability to qualify. He's so strong in here when it comes to competing, and he has engine like you've never seen before in this sport.
Like I've always once this injury wasn't going away quickly, I was like, man, there's $40,000 up for grabs at High Rocks World Championships. Like he should just start signing up.
Yeah,
for that. Like because
maybe we need. Yeah, maybe that's the I need to speak to Con.
Yeah,
you can make the mega bucks.
Yeah. And outside of, are you expecting any? Have you had any like nice DMs from any other athletes that you're thinking like, oh hey, come to Iceland? Like, is there any other stuff happening?
Yeah, no, people necessarily are not super keen to move to Iceland. It's a beautiful country. Can you see the picture on the background? By the way, I chose this, but that's Evert, one of the owners of the gym in cool. Epic Icelandic. But no, there's no one who's like going to move to Iceland. But I'm working with Reggie still. Like he's recovering from that pec tear that he had at the semis.
He's like right on the cusp. Like he's like he needs like if from a spectator standpoint, take this as advice, whatever. But no, he feels like he just like one or two little tweaks and he's games. Like he's just right on the edge. Like
he certainly has the physical capacity. I think he needs to take a breath and then go, and then he's fine. I think that's kind of what we need to work on for him, and just bring things together in the context of CrossFit. I think he's 20-minute FTP tests and like he's like 5K runs.
Yeah, you talk about crazy. Ricky's mindset. Like Reggie is a psycho. Like he will go to a dark place. Like
but the problem is it's a 20-minute workout and he's in the dark place 90 seconds
after 30 seconds. Yeah.
So that's kind of something that we are working on, or we need to work on. Like it's being intentional, not just in training, but also being intentional in competitions, and knowing how to approach workouts, and knowing how to stay calm in competitions, knowing how to relax in competitions, and make sure you conserve your energy on the floor and not burn it out at the warm-up area. I think that these are like these experiential things for Reggie. But then I think just getting better at combining things, getting better at doing CrossFit versus just being a physical beast. If you give him single modality, insane. It's just about developing his capacity to handle this kind of multimodal CrossFit.
Do BK and Annie, like if an athlete approaches you, do you kind of go to Annie and be like, hey, this girl, like, what do you think? Or do you just say, like, do you use your better judgment and say, yeah, I'm sure that'd be fine?
I'll use my better judgment and say, that's not necessarily fine. Let me talk to them. No, okay. I definitely, especially Annie and Björkvin, they are in a sense, for me, the original athletes that trusted me with their careers. And I trust them. And I think that's, again, one of those things where to maintain that trust and to maintain the respect between each other, I always speak with them. Like before I started working with Jonne, for example, I would speak with Björkvin and just make sure, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. He spoke to me. What are your thoughts? So I would always have that conversation. Now, it doesn't mean that if they disagree that I just then automatically say no to the other athlete. This just means that I want to hear what they have to say. For sure.
Allegra says she paid, so I'll pull up her comment. Another good one. I learned something new about Jami today. Capital J. I remember seeing him, Pauli, capital P, and Annie on Behind the Scenes 11. Still legends. Wow, she's been watching Savannah stuff for a long time.
Yeah, old school. Nice.
There was another. Again, I'm not gonna be able to fucking find it. Well, there's one of them. Bob. He does the training plan, I believe. He said
we have a Bob. I don't know if this Bob.
I think he might.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I think he might be Irish, but maybe I'm wrong. I did the training plan, and as programs go, by far the most heavily influences by sources outside of CrossFit. I love it, but still can't get over how different it is. And you've kind of alluded to that. Your drive to there's another one. He's a big fan. Your drive to take from other sports and stuff, which is like, it's something that I've heard of consistently about the training plan from all the different athletes. I think it's no secret or no surprise, like the list of athletes that you name, maybe this is just personal bias, but like I really like Khan as a person. I really like BK as a person. I really like Annie as a person. Like, you seem to have, you say that you need to check like about Yana, but like, again, really good guy, like really likable person.
Oh yeah.
Heinrich, really likable.
Mm.
Reggie, like when you can understand what he's saying, really likable guy.
Yeah.
But like, you're obviously an incredibly good judge of character. The people that you've drawn towards you they all have a lot of similar traits, like physically, but they also have a lot of similar traits personality wise, where they're likable and like genial and kind, and all the things that you kind of want, working with each other and stuff. Congratulations on all you've achieved so far. Good luck with the off season, and sure, drop me a text when you know what Annie's doing. And best of luck with next season. I'm looking forward to seeing like Yana, BK, Reggie, all those guys, Heinrich, Can, hopefully. And yeah, enjoy the next couple of months. It's you're back in Iceland now, like full time, yeah.
Yeah. This is this full-time gig living in Iceland.
Yeah, how exciting! You're in
It is.
for a bit of a shitstorm now for the next couple of months. There, I'd say it probably gets a bit rough, does it? Like November, December.
Yeah. It's a lovely Icelandic weather. One thing you do is when you move to Iceland, you learn to appreciate the nice days. The sun is out, you have to be out because
Isn't
you
it
just
like,
don't know.
yeah, isn't it like just a couple of hours some of the days? Like sunshine.
It's. I'm from Finland, so Finland is worse. Actually, it's darker,
Okay.
so it's not so bad. But yeah, I mean, the midnight sun, the sun does not set in June, and then it does not really rise that high. December, January, February.
That's crazy.
So you just learn to dwell in the darkness.
Yeah. It's good that the Icelandic people are so nice, because if that was anywhere else, it'd be riots on the days where the sun doesn't come up, or like, I don't know, something terrible would happen.
There's much excitement.
But listen, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm really delighted we got to make this happen, and we'll see you maybe in Wadapalooza or maybe at the games. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.